First meeting, we have the Caroline County Transportation Committee of 2025 order. Guess our first order of business, well, I guess first order of business, if I could ask, we could amend the agenda and move item 5, approval of August 7th minutes as the first order of business.
Motion approved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Alex abstained also.
So in your packet, there were the minutes from the August 7th, 2024 meeting, or approval of minutes.
Move to approve as mail.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Alex abstained.
So motion passes. Those minutes are adopted. Now we return to the item number 1, which is at this point introductions. Leon Hughes, Director of Planning and Community Development, Caroline County.
Alex Long, Mayor of Town Fort Royal.
Becky Golden, a representative, Caroline County.
Jimmy Street, representing Fort Royal.
Ian Ottis, I'm from GWRC in Tampa.
Carrie Eves, GWRC Tampa.
Kyle Bates with VDOT.
Andrew Thorpe with VDOT.
Linda Riley, representative, Caroline County. And I'm Lisa Vick with Planning and Community Development.
All right. So briefly, the purpose and intent of the meeting is for this committee to address transportation concerns and projects in Caroline County and hopefully advance the objective of improving the street and road network here in Caroline County. The next item on the agenda is election of officers, and I would ask that put that off to the next meeting. The bylaws don't specify that we have a time specific. It just says it at the once a year. So I think that's not what we can put off and hopefully get more of our members to attend and press upon them the need to be at the meeting next month.
Especially the chairman and vice chair.
Yes, very true. So is there a motion to?
Motion approved.
You? Is there a second?
Second.
We will move adoption of
You need a
election of
vote, my
officers.
friend.
Yeah. So, is there a vote?
Aye.
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 So approved. So we'll move that to the election of officers to the next month's meeting, which will be March. Adoption of the calendar. So I would say at this point, it's agreeable with the members that are here that we kind of, to the majority, stay on the once a month, first Wednesday of the month schedule that was previously adopted.
I suggest that we address the next meeting when people are here.
Okay, so we will continue next month to March, first Wednesday in March.
All right.
Okay, very good. So there, motion,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Let's move to the next meeting. All right, so next item on the agenda is presentation by WRC, Rural Transportation Advisory Committee. Carrie, are you?
I'm just going to introduce us, if that's okay.
That's perfectly fine.
Some of you know us already. Many of you know us already. Ian Ollis. I run all the transportation programs at GWRC and VAMPO. And Carrie Eves will introduce herself. So tonight, we're specifically coming just to share an idea that we have with you to improve our service to Caroline County and also to King George County. Something we've been thinking about for a while, and before we get to a board where there's going to be a vote, make a decision on this sort of thing, we just thought we'd just get your opinions, get your inputs, and so we're going to share that with you. Carrie will take you through that. And then we'd like to come back with a couple of other things that we need to talk to you about. One of the studies we're working on with and for the county, we need to do a presentation on that, but that won't be tonight. We'll come back at another time. And finally, congratulations on getting 2 of your projects to score really well in Smart Scale. And we look forward to the CTB voting the funding for you. I think it's going to go through, and that's great. Some of our jurisdictions didn't get any of their projects approved. Or metropolitan planning organizations in the state of Virginia didn't get a single project approved. 0 on the high priority list at all, right? And we at least did. So we are very grateful for what we did get. Some concerns about the program, but congratulations to your counties. Basically all I wanted to say. Well done, and we look forward to seeing those projects come to fruition in the future. Without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Carrie, who has been working on our new proposal, our new idea for you, and she's going to take you through that. Thank you very much for inviting us.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So as Ian was saying, we have a proposal for a new committee. I know how much we all love meetings and committees. However, we think this one will be a benefit. Proposal for a Rural Technical Advisory Committee. So currently, the FAMPO TAC combines the rural and urban counties into one committee. This is composed of engineers and planners from the 5 GWRC localities, along with VDOT, transit agencies, and federal highways, all together in one. Now, because of that, they end up mostly on urban stuff, but that's actually the next slide. These folks get together and they collaborate on regional transportation initiatives, and they benefit from access to VDOT folks, FHWA, and all kinds of other subject matter experts. And they directly advise the FAMPO and GWRC boards on transportation decisions. They meet monthly at our building in downtown Fredericksburg. Next slide. The problem is they are primarily focused on the FAMPO jurisdictions with urban problems. They rarely address rural transportation needs. So because of that, the rural county reps don't even often attend because their business doesn't get discussed. We've noticed this, and we think that Caroline and King George are really missing out on the opportunity to access our staff, VDOT, and other resources, and the chance to collaborate with their colleagues. So next slide. So our proposal, Ian and my proposal that we've been working on, is to set up a rural TAC for Caroline and King George counties. The idea is this would be quarterly in somewhere that is convenient for you out here, perhaps alternating between the 2 counties. And this board would directly advise the GWRC board. And this would provide a forum for you to regularly communicate and collaborate with VDOT, with our staff, through the Rural Work Program, which is the scope of work that we do with you every year, and would help you collaborate with your colleagues from King George. The idea is this would help you communicate better. It would align regional planning that we do for you and that VDOT does for you better with your own priorities, and it would produce higher quality projects. Next slide. So this would be part of the Rural Work Program, which is the yearly scope of work that we do for you, that we agree upon with you, that we develop every spring. This would be a better way to carry out some of our current RWP tasks, such as, and that first bullet point, 2.0, is not right. It should be 2.1, make much more sense. 2.1 is VDOT statewide planning assistance and coordination. So forgive me, it's been a long week over at GWRC. We've been mourning Smart Scale all week. So it should be 2.1, VDOT statewide planning assistance and coordination. 2.2, local and regional analysis and planning support. And 2.3, Caroline and King George transportation study needs. Next slide. So the first task, VDOT coordination. Currently, this is something we're supposed to do under the RWP. Participate in meetings with VDOT staff, assist in the development of project pipeline studies, and participate in any additional outreach meetings. All of these things could be better done, we believe, through this new committee. Next slide. 2.2, local and regional analysis and planning support. Again, identify and develop rural transportation projects, and provide technical assistance, assist with initial project development for smart scale, transportation alternatives, safe routes to school, and other state transportation funding programs. All of these things, again, if we're meeting with you quarterly or another regular, like quarterly or even monthly eventually, it's going to be easier for us to do these things for you than it is right now. Next slide. 2.3 task. This is something we do each fiscal year. We do we address your study needs, link to economic development opportunities. Each year we agree with you on a task to engage in. Right now, our current task is supporting development of smart scale projects. Having a standing committee is going to ensure consistent and frequent communication with us, with VDOT, locality planners, and with your requisite boards. So we believe this is the next logical step in our rural work program model. This is going to allow us to better anticipate your transportation needs and ensure that we're working toward your priorities in a more collaborative fashion instead of us handing you things and going, here, this is what you need. This will allow more back and forth communication with each other and more collaboration for you to tell us what you need. Next slide. So that said, how's it going to work? We think it can be held quarterly on the second Monday, just looking at our schedules, your schedules, but that is not set in stone. We're going to get together and think about what's best. Either King George, Caroline County, or alternate. Running the committee, preparing the agenda items, facilitating presentations. That would be one of the tasks in the RWP. The agenda packet could be sent to your boards after each meeting, and that would help with greater communication for project development and other initiatives. So your boards could feel like they know what's going on. You know, there can sometimes be a situation where the staff and the elected officials don't always know what each other's doing, and this would help with that. Next slide. So we're thinking that the committee would consist of 2 staff members from each county, local VDOT members. Forgive me, Kyle, your name's on this slide. Currently David Beal and Kyle Bates. Cassie has also suggested Robert Butler. 1 GWRC staff liaison, plus another is needed. That's going to be me and possibly someone else. And then other members recommended by staff. So we would give a staff report at the FAMPO-TAC meeting, and then currently the committee members from Caroline and King George who are on the TAC could also still attend that committee as they see fit or not, whichever they choose. Next slide. All right, so we've spoken to VDOT District and Central Office, and they are in support of this committee. We'll be speaking to both boards of supervisors and the GWRC board. If you support the committee, please let your board know. And then we're hoping to begin meetings in late spring. And then we're going to work on the bylaws next FY. And take your comments and questions.
Is it possible that if we give you our email address, you could send us the slide deck?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And very good. Thank you. Thank you. Great idea. And personally, I think it's an idea that should be made a reality. First off. Secondly, there is a big problem because, as you know, FAMPO, King George, and Caroline are not voting members. And it might be a reason that you find that some of the members of FAMPO don't show up at the meetings as often as they should because they're not voting members. And I looked into that, about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I've forgotten whatever it was. But it would be most beneficial to take another look as to whether Caroline and King George can be admitted as voting members of that committee. And that comes in at 2 different levels. First and foremost is the political level, and whether Spotsylvania, Stafford, and Fredericksburg want somebody else in the mix. And in terms of visiting politics, that could be good or bad, depending on the situation, because the balance of voting can sway, and maybe that could get some projects off dead center that have kind of languished over the years. And then secondly, of course, is that legal framework was written, what, about 40 years ago for FAMPO, and the demographics have changed. And indeed, I guess Office of Management Budget decides like MSAs and what have you, and it could be worth another look in general. That's the big picture, but the rural thing, I think it's.
Anyone else?
I like that you had included things like safe routes to schools and other things on there that I know that sometimes get pushed aside. I wondered too, sorry, I'm trying to shut this watch off. I wondered too if there could be, or make sure that there's some type of disability advocate somewhere along the way involved, because I don't know exactly who's on the committee.
Okay.
I know that I've talked to a lot of people from that. I don't know, it just seems like there's a disconnect at times, and I know that there is from the Caroline level. So I would wonder if this might be an entry then to bring them back and get them involved as one from the rural level.
I understand. So the technical advisory committee is planners and engineers and VDOT folks, but you might want to give me your information, because we need folks for the BIPED committee, which also has disability advocates on it. And we don't have anybody from Caroline right now, so maybe that's something we could talk
property right there. I could let us. Yeah.
Anyway, we could talk more about
Okay, yeah, we can
that.
talk more about it.
But certainly, as far as safe routes to school, this would be where we would talk about TAP applications and safe routes to school, and try and advocate for Caroline to be more active in that, for King George to be more active in that, and get those applications out to get them done.
Okay.
Acting Chairman, there's one other thing that we are doing now for your studies, so not necessarily directly related to this new technical advisory committee, but it'll affect what we do in the technical advisory committee. We're setting up a separate database of local folks who live in Caroline or King George County, because when we do work on studies for each of the rural counties, we need to conduct a process of public engagement on those studies. And so we're creating a new database at our office that is separate from the FAMPO one, so that when we conduct studies, we can directly involve local folks who wish to give comment on the studies. And we've already begun that. 60 people have already signed up to be part of the new mailing list. And it's basically just a mailing list to send out the final draft once the county has seen it and so on, send out the final draft for people to comment on, but that will include studies that we do through the Rural Work Program.
For example, I have sent for you to review the Carmel Church Transportation Report, and when you're done reviewing that and you send it back to me and it's ready, I'll present it here, and then that will go out for public comment, and the folks from Caroline and King George, primarily Caroline, of course, will be able to comment on it.
And those public comments are useful. You know, sometimes we have a gentleman in, actually I don't know where he lives, he's in one of the urban jurisdictions. he reads every damn page of every damn study, and he sends us all our spelling errors and all our grammatical errors, and he finds things that you, when you stare at the computer screen all day, you don't see them, and he finds them and he sends them to us. But then also we get practical comments from people. Hey, you've missed out that on this corner there's this funny thing that you don't know is wrecking the traffic flow or the pedestrian ability to cross the road. And so those public comments are useful. We don't just treat it as a, tick the box, pile up the public comments. We actually read them, and where we can add something to the study without major catastrophe, we see if we can accommodate those. So we do take them seriously.
So I do have a question and then a comment. So my question is, are other NPOs looking at doing or reestablishing rural transportation committees? Because when we first talked about this idea years ago, when I was in Prince George, the PDC, the Crater PDC, did have a rural transportation committee because it was kind of split down there as well between urban jurisdictions and rural jurisdictions. I think there were 3 jurisdictions that qualified as rural at that time. I think it was Prince George, Dinwiddie, and Sussex. And so there was a rural transportation committee. Looking back at the good old days, that was back when VDOT, there's a bit of editorial here, hadn't completely run out of toll money. And so there was some money available for rural transportation initiatives. And so, we were able to get some things done with that pot of money through the state. So my question is, are other MPOs looking at reestablishing rural committees in an effort to then be able to approach the Commonwealth to say, this is a statewide effort. We should allocate some funds specifically for rural transportation needs. Because I think if you look at the results of Smart Scale, the majority of the lion's share of those funds went to the metropolitan areas and those jurisdictions that are part of regional consortiums. And so there again, the little guys are on the outside looking in. And so if this was a statewide effort, there might be some legs to have the Commonwealth allocate some funding specifically for rural transportation. So that's kind of my question.
As far as who's doing these sorts of things, it's PDCs, not NPOs. And I know Cassie was talking about, there's one that Robert is currently going to over in the Northern Neck area. They've got one there. And I know there's one in the Charlottesville area. And I haven't looked farther to see who else in the state has.
Okay. Without perhaps realizing that you're asking about 5 different questions in one there, and Carrie's kind of attacked the one angle. The limitation to doing rural work is a financial one. Nobody can remember a single time in over 20 years the rural work program annual budget from the state of Virginia has been increased. I don't mean increased in terms of major increases. I'm talking about 1 cent. Doesn't mean 1 cent of increase. And if you know what inflation has been like the last 23 or 25 years, it's eroding the value of the money that we get to spend. So we're having to be careful about what we agree to do in the rural work program practically in terms of studies, because the money is going less and less far than it did last year. And that's been going on for 20 some odd years. The VA, the Virginia Planning District Commission body, has a priority as one of their top 3 priorities to appeal to the state as a group from across the Commonwealth to get a significant increase in the rural work funds. Last year, they didn't pick it as the one big bang project that they pushed the state for. I believe they're planning a new effort this year to raised that concern again through the budgeting cycle. I don't know how far they've got so far in January, but I know that they said they were going to push for this. And that is a statewide group of all the planning district commissions that have decided this is a big need. So what happens is that in the other jurisdiction areas that Carrie hasn't alluded to, it's a mixed bag. Because the funds are so limited, they're careful with adding things because there's just no money. And you end up using urban funds to cross-subsidize the rural work program because it's just not enough money. Effectively, we're doing it now. We don't talk about it because we don't want the urban, localities to get upset by it with us. I don't actually cross-pollinate the money, but every now and again we do a couple of extra hours work on a rural project that really we can't because the funds are so limited. We just juggle our hours to make sure that we fulfill the legal requirements, but also try and help out where we can without messing with the money. But the annual funding is really limited. There's a small match that the two counties do pay towards the planning commission, and a little portion of that is the match for the funds for the rural work program, I believe. So there's a little contribution that we get from the jurisdictions, but it's not going to pay a good salary to a full person. And so we use that as sparingly as we can to try and get you the most bang for the buck in those terms. I would encourage Caroline to talk to the chair and vice chair of the VAPDC.
Yes, VAPDC.
And ask them how far they've got, and if you can be part of the effort to get those funds increased. They are made available by the Commonwealth of Virginia, so they mostly local tax funds, I believe.
Thank you. Well, I'll say we certainly appreciate your efforts with the limited funds that you have. So, thank you all for what you do with the shoestring budget. And I think it is important for us to reach out to the VAPC and, encourage and support that effort for funding for jurisdictions.
All the other, as far as I know anyway, all of the other transportation funding streams have been increased almost every year. And then you get to this one and it's just dead.
Decades with no increase.
Yeah.
And part of this proposal is to try and more effectively, like this is a facilitation, like having this committee is a way to facilitate getting more of your needs met with the limited amount of funds. Like if we get folks together, they can get initiatives done and start building, like figuring things
And
out.
rebel rouse too.
I mean,
And also with things like smart scale, you really need the jurisdictions and VDOT and us to be talking.
to be
Because
talking a
what
lot
keeps
more.
going wrong is right at the end of the process, we discover that what the county thinks they're going to get, and what VDOT thinks they're going to get, and what we know is not always the same thing. Or, as happened this round again, some jurisdiction in our 5 jurisdiction group decides they want to change the project at the last minute, right? They want to remove a lane of traffic or add a bridge or something, and then you can't fix that. You can't fix that with 3 weeks till the deadline. Right? So it's better if you talk regularly as the process goes on so that VDOT knows what the drawing needs to look like, and we know what GIS work is required and the cost estimates that need to be done and so on.
For you guys, if possible.
Yeah, we do our best to try and work with the localities when those things happen, but sometimes it's just not possible. I mean, I know you talked about morning, but how many applications did we get in the region?
More?
No, like
Oh,
applications.
total up, not very many compared. Like I don't have them all memorized. There's so many numbers. Actually, it's in
34.
it's in this project.
So I'm saying,
Hand me that, please, sir.
34.
Thank you.
where I'm going with this is
It is.
VDOT had to do quite a bit of work
Yes.
on
Yes,
getting
they
all
did.
of these things together. and 4 of them got awarded
Yeah.
out of the
Yeah.
30 some
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
applications. And then you can talk about the pre-screening. It's what, above 60, isn't it?
Out of 34, they got
Yeah,
4.
4 out of 34.
So
we
much
wasted
work.
a lot of time,
So
along
much
with
work.
the locality.
And the localities waste a lot of effort, and we wasted effort, and we're not upset about it. It's part of our job to help, but we really need to try and match the project with the criteria that they're going to use to judge on, which means sometimes the project isn't exactly the way you want it, but if we do it a bit differently, you're more likely to get it actually funded. So we are going to have to try again. They used new criteria this year, and they gave us those criteria in about February, the technical guide. And in April, we had to hand in the list of projects, and in June, we had to hand in the final submissions. And if you only know the judging criteria at a high level in February, that's far too late to change your whole project, because this year they're not going to really fund many bike paths. Right now, you focused your whole effort around preparing candidate projects with bike paths, and now suddenly that's not a thing, right? It's really disastrous to find that out so late in the game. So we're going to try and push the Commonwealth Transportation Board to make changes that they want to make early, and let us know and give us a chance to comment. I'm the second vice chair of the VAMPO, which is the Virginia Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations. So we are, as a group, again, trying to influence the CTB to do this a little earlier, give us an opportunity for comment, so that we interact with this process of coming up with new criteria. And so if we get that earlier, that helps. Also, if we get the jurisdictions involved with VDOT, and if you have a consultant, the consultant and us, so that we all know what this project needs to look like at the end, and make those tweaks to get it a high score if we can. And then don't change it again. The minute you bring in late changes, not a single project that brought in late changes got funded.
Right.
So we worked on them, we handed them in, they didn't get funded because it's dangerous to do that. And some of them got pulled, got withdrawn, and some of them did get submitted and they never got any funding. So it's better if we work together, which is why we suggest, or I thought of this. I was sitting there thinking, this system is not working for the rural counties.
Point of clarification.
How can we help make it work better?
Criteria, smart scale criteria?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and they're a little vague because they tell you what they're going to do. They don't tell you exactly how they're going to do it. So there's a little bit of guesswork involved. We've got to try and work out, when you say you're going to score it for congestion, what do you mean?
Well, this year they couldn't even agree themselves at the last minute, so it was a year.
Okay.
It wasn't our best year in small scale as a region. We've had much better years in the past. Also, there was 38% less money available this year.
Yeah, I don't know if you all were aware of that, but
So that
across the state, 38% less.
So when you got that much less money, all the big projects basically get canned because there's just no money for them. And they told us this year, when we were preparing projects, please put in big projects this year. We don't want small projects. We don't want those
Yeah,
bike
bigger
paths
the better.
and stuff. We want big roadway projects.
Yes.
One. Boom.
Yeah.
And
A
then
lot of,
they
funding,
didn't
though.
fund any of those big projects because the cash ask was so high, they scored terribly and never got any funding. So now we feel like we were sort of slightly misled into making big projects that they were never going to fund, because they didn't tell us, by the way, we've got 38% less money. We only found that out after the award. So these things are difficult, and you've got to try to work together as a region to try and get the best projects and to make them as best you can to align with the criteria that you do know about, so that you score highly and then you get more projects approved and so on.
So, a quick question, you may or may not know, I think it's probably in the document, but of the 34 projects that were submitted, do you have an estimate of how many had leverage funding on? Just some amount of leverage funding?
We can.
Yeah, we can certainly.
It's on the slides you presented to the TAC.
Yeah, I've got a spreadsheet.
Yeah, just go through the spreadsheet and
Were
look.
there fair, I mean,
Like off the top of my head, I don't know, but
do you think 10?
just need to look down the list. Sorry. I have been digging into lots of analytics, but not that one specifically.
Well, the only reason I asked is because I actually watched the CTB meeting the day they made the announcement.
Mm-hmm.
And the chair,
Me
I don't know
too.
if he said it 5 times, but he made it a point to say that leverage funding was important.
Yes.
And if jurisdictions chose not to have leverage funding, then that was on them. And essentially, we were saying if you don't have any skin in the game, then it's
That's
going to reflect in the awards.
That's
And-
exact phrase used. Go ahead.
And so, I think it's important for all jurisdictions, not just Caroline, to think about that's how the game is going to be played, and how do we improve our chances at, being effective and getting some additional projects. I will say last year the county started setting aside a little bit of money for this very reason. And so hopefully going forward, it's not a lot of money, but every little bit helps. And through other sources of funding, we'll have some funds to, at some point, make some decent leverage amounts towards projects as they come on in the future. So
You're quite correct. If the project is going to cost more than $10 million,
That's where.
if you don't put leverage funding on, don't bother submitting the project because it's just not going to score, because they divide your score by the cost, by the ask, how much you asking from the state for your project.
Right.
So if the project is 20 million and you're not putting in any leverage funding, then they divide your score by 20,
Your benefit score.
your benefit score. So if you're only asking for 5 and they divide it, it's much better if you're asking for 20 or 30 or 40. So we don't know at this stage, and we're going to have to workshop this a bit with VDOT and other players. What happens to the bridges? You're not going to build a bridge for $10 million.
Right.
So how are we ever going to get bridges funded? Is it all going to be on the locality to fund it themselves?
Right, and that's something you're going to care about.
You're going to care
your
about the
future 639
Yeah.
bridge.
So is it impossible now in the future to fund bridges ever again? Or is the locality going to have to fund it all? Could be 140 million for a bridge.
In Caroline County, the school board met with the Board of Supervisors to discuss what the school board needs for capital facilities. And by the way, Caroline County rate of growth was 9.2% from 2020 to 2024. And you're looking at, I forgot the exact number, probably 150 million or so for a school or two. That's cheap. Stafford County spent 130 million on their high school, and they're building another high school. So money's going to be even more dear, and it might be constructive to look at what in-kind contribution, or such as maybe getting some right of way. I think they passed a law that can't buy right of way for future projects. That legislation, if that's the case, needs to be revisited and amended such that jurisdiction might be able to get some right of way. And with inflation and what they pay, say, 500,000 5 years from now might be worth 5 million, right? So that's you see what I mean? You just kind of game the system instead of just all hard dollars. Do the best you can with trying to figure something out.
Well, we're going to probably have to advise our localities, the 5 localities, to put all their leverage funding on one project if it's more than a $10 million project. if you've got 3 projects more than $10 million, don't put leverage funding on all 3. Take all the leverage funding, stick it on one, because your chances of getting it approved with a small amount of leverage funding on each project, they're probably all 3 going to fail, because of the way they, in this round for going forward, are dividing the project score by the cash that you're asking for. And there was a additional step of funding in the old system that got you around the need for the leverage funding. They've removed that step. We call it step 2. Step 1 and step 3 is what's left. And step 3 is divide the score by the ask and you get a final score. And that score, I mean, we had so many of our projects that scored 1, because when you divided the score by the ask, come out to 1.01 or 0.9, or so many of those 34 projects got a score around 1. And you're just like, how the heck do you fix that? Because they funded projects that scored 5 and 10, and of the 34, like 28 or something scored around 1. Dead in the water, can't get anything because the ask is so much greater than the score, and then you're dead.
So the other thing I think I hear you saying is, don't have projects more than $10 million.
I'm sorry, what?
Don't have projects that are more than $10 million.
I mean, that can work, but you know how much a mile of sidewalk costs?
Yeah.
No, I understand, but I think, you know, my philosophy towards transportation improvements is you don't always have to have the biggest project immediately. If you do some of these smaller projects, you know, in succession, you start to build the infrastructure to support that larger project. And I can think of a number of instances where a really big project asked in the region, but if those projects were to come to fruition, there wasn't the supporting infrastructure in place to support them, and they just would have blown up the network somewhere else. So it's kind of like, you know, walk before you run and do the little things. And oftentimes I think, you know, we forget that some of the smaller projects provide the greatest benefit to the citizens that are traveling on the network. I mean, I can think of a number of small projects in some locations that provide an immense benefit for not an awful lot of money. So
Often your intersections cause more congestion than the road itself.
yes,
Right.
So if you fix the intersection, the road capacity isn't so bad. It's the intersection that's causing the problem.
and that goes to my point about the small projects sometimes at the intersections that provide the most bang for the buck.
Yeah.
Well, your project, your Page Mary Road project, was the highest scoring in the state intersection project, and it pretty much scored what?
I just love it.
It scored so high on safety. It was a safety project.
Yeah.
Through the roof. Safety. And no leverage funding because it didn't need it. Its score was like 19, and then divided by the ask became 27 or something.
Can you imagine all these bigger localities that look at that project of yours and they see that your score was 19 and their score was like 3? Northern Virginia Transportation Authority got 0 high priority projects.
Well, this was a DGP project, but
Yes, I know.
like,
But on their high priority project list, it's got 0 projects funded, not 1. And they got leverage that makes us look like,
Yeah.
But Portsmouth is taking quite a few dollars down. They're still working on their tunnel.
now that means Caroline has had the top scoring project in the state twice now.
which is
Yeah.
great.
I think it's worth noting too. I'm gonna brag on us for a second. Like, Leon, when did you start in Caroline?
2 years ago, first
2022, 23.
23, February 23.
So, if you didn't know, Leon and I worked together for about a decade now, between his time with planning and zoning and being involved in transportation in Spotsylvania. And when he came here, we very quickly put our heads together. And I worked with Fincham for quite a while, and he did some outstanding things for Caroline County over the years. And with Leon walking in, he was asking me, and we were kind of just spitballing, like, what is it that we need to do? And it's like Caroline County, that's like the round of Smart Scale before that, which had just gone to pass in 22, right? They had 0 applications, right? And it was a conversation we quickly had as a group, and it was like, well, what would they have applied for? Because everything, it's not just like, well, I want a project here. You got to have data, you got to have a study, you got to have all these things. And we talked to him, it was like, where's the areas that we want to focus on? We had this old 301 study, and there's a lot of good and bad things about it, and again, it's very, very hot topic, right?
Yes.
Controversial even. But at the end of the day, we looked at it like, you know what? We've got these. I was getting all these complaints about Page Road. We were moving to put some flashing signs up there. We said, let's do a study. And we got with our planning section at the district, and we started moving forward. And that study was finishing up in 23, going into 24, and it gave you the applications that eventually was the highest scoring project in the state. You got the same amount of projects as a number of projects as Spotsylvania County, and Stafford got 0. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I think that to your point, we're getting at is that's a flaw in the system, to be clear. But nonetheless, this is like, where's the champagne? That's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
And I think it's really exciting that this started in a room just like this. How can we do this, right? And everything seems like, that's why I've always enjoyed maintenance, and because my crews can go out and we can build a turn lane and I can get things done like that. But when you talk about projects, I've always disliked that aspect of the larger things, because you got to go through this, and you got to get funding and a study, and then get it awarded, and then 6 years later you'll see this project, and it's like, I'm probably going to be looking for another job by a lot of time. So it's it's nice to see those milestones as you go through this. And I think it started in a room just like this, so it's pretty exciting. So I kudos to you all, right? Leon, you especially.
Congratulations, Leon.
Yes, it's a big deal.
There you go.
But it's not me. I mean, I have to say you guys were instrumental in this, so
I didn't do anything.
thank you. Supporting us going forward. If you look back in the minutes, the committee did make recommendations for going forward.
So don't forget that some decisions have to be taken at a political level. So you might think you didn't do a lot, but if you encourage the county to do something, you contributed to making a decision to submit applications and all that. I'm currently working with political issues around projects in Fampo, and I must tell you, the politics can wreck all of your projects. So don't say you're doing nothing. You are contributing to the discussion and hopefully approval of various projects and things by your county. That's important. And then Leon and these guys doing technical work it looks like the ones doing the work. Okay,
And we
they're
all
off.
greatly
Big one.
appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
And ma'am, well, you're a FAMPO, y'all will be.
Well, no, it's
And FAMPO.
GWRC right now.
GWRC and Fampo, yeah.
We're here as rural planners working for GWRC tonight.
All right.
All right, well, thank you, Carrie and Ian.
And
Appreciate
if you
that.
would email a copy of the slides to the folks here.
We will. We certainly will. Yeah, we certainly
Be
will.
great, thank you.
Great job.
So,
Thank you.
so you guys approve of this idea, and I should take it to your board?
Yeah, I guess that's is there a consensus among the committee that we should support the rural transportation?
I motion that this committee support the proposed rural transportation board between Caroline and King George County with FAMPO.
All right, there's a
Does
motion.
that sum it up?
With GWRC.
With GWRC. I'm sorry, not FAMPO, GWRC.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
We're going to try to do the same thing at King King George, and also we mentioned it to their board just in passing.
I know some of the folks over there, the board.
Gotta go back there now.
I'll try, let me know a week ahead of time and I'll try to talk to them.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, next item on the agenda is updates, and I'll just briefly touch on the Route 1 corridor study. We passed out the final version of the study. Like we were just talking about, that was kind of the impetus for the smart scale projects that came along. And so we look forward to our partners at VDOT conducting more studies with us and creating more opportunities for funding, which leads us to the second item on the update list is the STAR study. And Kyle, are you guys able to provide some?
Yeah, just some real high level stuff. In fact, most of the things that I've got from here on out, I could probably run through rather quickly. I've just got the email that you and I got from Cassie here. So just a quick update. One, Cassie is no longer with us here in the Fredericksburg district. She's alive still. I shouldn't say it like that. She's with Central Office, VDOT, and planning. So she'll still be a partner in a lot of great things with VDOT, but she won't be here in the Fredericksburg district and specifically in Caroline. But I believe she is going to continue to take over some of the stuff related to the study, which is great. She's also a Caroline County resident, so if you need another member here, she's probably really excited to attend. She lives over in Bowling Green area. But that being said, there is a study that we're pushing for, and all of this, where this kind of started was, how do we widen the bridge, just to put it bluntly. We've kind of had to evolve that conversation into, well, if you widen the bridge, what do you do with the ramps? And if you ramps, what do you do with coming off on 639? And there's a lot of aspects to it. So this study as a whole is officially being called the Ladysmith Route 639 I-95 STAR study from Green Road to Bull Church Road. So it's this stretch here that they're going to look at how things are operating. They're going to look at crash data, safety performance with the existing interchange. They're going to look at an anticipated design year of 2055 through this study. This STAR study is going to be very similar to some of the other ones we've done throughout the area, which is going to look at how we can make it function better in a manner of speaking. And that's going to be a good thing. So depending on what comes back, there may be a recommendation for a new type of interchange at Ladysmith. I don't know. I'm speaking without any data right now, but we're excited to see what comes back. So when you talk about a time frame, they're currently ready to proceed to phase 2 here, which they're going to start collecting a lot of data out there. They're going to go into some public engagement. And eventually the hope is that by mid 2025, we'll have some kind of the draft concepts, detailed concepts that we can give to probably this committee. And then, as you all remember from the pipeline study on Route 1, there's public engagement. So that's when we'll rent out a certain place near Route 1 Ladysmith area and get some folks to come on out and show them what we've got, do a presentation and get feedback. So that would be when this committee, I would definitely encourage to come out and give your support for whatever the alternatives may or may not be, or whatever recommendations, let them know which ones you like and don't like, and here's why. So, and the idea is to have this at least, maybe not fully tied up, but ready for next smart scale round, which we're looking at in 2026. We just finished, we're talking about the results here in, the beginning of 2025, but we've already started moving towards, all right, we got it ready because the next application round is in 2026, every 2 years.
Pre-application is going to start in March, April.
Yeah.
This year?
No, next March, April.
We do at that point.
So we got to do the study this year of whatever, so that in March next year we've got the final project to hand in.
It's time to start
Since
working
this
on it.
is I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Since this is a 95 project, essentially, won't there be federal money available?
I think that really all depends. You have to do a lot of federal things. Anytime you're touching 95 and any of the ramps, you got to go through the FHWA, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of added reports, which is added money that you have to jump through. But the type of funding, I don't think it necessarily means that it has to be like federal funding. But
So don't be hoodwinked by this belief that we all have that the federal government will take care of their federal responsibilities and widen I-95. It never happens. Even if there is federal money, the maximum they'll give you for a project, even if it's on the interstate, is 80% of the project. Now, if the project costs you $150 million and you've got to come up with a 20% match, you worked out how many dollars that is? So that's the problem with the federal dollars. Smart scale is a mix of state gas taxes and I believe some federal money in there. But it's a mix of all kinds of money that the state puts together and says that we're going to put into smart scale. And we've just been explaining the whole problem with getting a smart scale project. So a smart scale project might have a little bit of federal funding in it, but it's lots of state tax dollars that go into it. But the federal government is not going to swoop in with 100% funding for a new bridge or an interstate.
Okay, so what if the feds take 80 and we have to cough up $150 million, that's 30 million. And can we do the 30 with the smart scale money? That now you have a leverage project.
I wish.
Is problematic. We've been trying this. It's problematic because there's a rule that you can't use federal money to match federal money. So if there's in that pot of smart scale money $1 of federal funds, then no, can't match federal money with federal money.
Take out the Fed and the smart scale.
I have been exploring this idea because I think that smart scale needs to box clever. And if people are prepared to apply for federal dollars for bigger projects, because clearly smart scale doesn't have the money at the moment for bigger projects, they should put that smart scale money into the brand of money it is and separate it out so that smart scale, if it's federal dollars, put it in a box that says federal dollars, and if it's state dollars, put it in a different box that says state dollars, so that you can do what you're suggesting. But the minute you mix the money, you can't match this with smart scale money, and so they've developed these rules that you can't do it. In theory, you can do it if the state agrees and splits the money that's in smart scale into the buckets from which it comes.
Right.
But you've got to get them to agree to do that, and I don't know that they will. So at the moment, the answer, I think, is no. I don't know if you know any different, but the answer...
Well, if you're going to redo the interchange, you're 150 million probably more.
yeah, I mean, they'll have some high-level planning estimates as they go through the STAR study, so we'll have a better idea of what we're looking at, what the alternatives are that we subject to.
And all this is at the tactical level, the strategic level. You need to figure out a way to fund transportation. Really do. Otherwise, just sit around the table and everybody moan and groan that we don't have the money, but you have the need. And especially the maintenance. Word. If
You have my support.
no, seriously. If you don't maintain the road, then we're all in trouble. Well, and the bridges.
Maintenance money is often there and it comes out of a totally separate pot. But anything new,
Well, let me back up 1 second, because the maintenance dollars, we get maintenance dollars, absolutely. It is a separate pot, but I would definitely tell you it is not there. The maintenance funds that we get, in the world of maintenance, I had maintenance dollars until it snowed on January 5th. And I blew my entire snow budget in 2 days.
Okay, so going back to the strategic level, what we really need to do is figure out how to approach our our legislators at the state level and maybe the federal level as to how to fund these things.
I would concur.
Otherwise, we're just dreaming.
I'll tell you, there's some other localities that they write a letter to the General Assembly every year to their local legislators say, we would like to more money into the maintenance program, construction program, or what have you. I think some hard conversations. You're exactly. It's got to happen at the highest level.
Yeah.
It's way outside.
And it could be that somebody forms a nonprofit, Citizens for Good Transportation, and rebel rouses and gets, say, 5,000 people show up in Richmond one morning.
Yeah.
And then you might get something.
Yeah, I mean, from the maintenance perspective, it's frustrating. You don't have enough money to. I mean, we're resurfacing roads because we've got money into this maintenance construction program, but I got corrugated metal pipes that unfortunately I don't have the funds to replace. So I'm putting brand new roads over top of failing pipes. It's like those things need to be replaced. They need to be cleaned out. The ditches need to be pulled. Like it needs to be a wholesale thing. We don't even have the money to mow the grass as much as we would like to. So I agree. It's everything you said.
And it might be that it has to get worse before it gets better.
Well, my only comment, and this will be my soapbox moment, camera. And this is my soapbox.
Is there a camera?
Remember, we were talking about the road transportation, and I said back then in the 90s there was money to fund rural transportation initiatives. That money was largely from the excess toll funds that were in the Commonwealth. A lot of people forget that there were tolls in Virginia on 95, and that funded the majority of the transportation budget. And, you know, I don't know why it's such a bad thing that the states to our north can have tolls and we pay to go north, but the entire country comes through Virginia on 95, and we don't take advantage of that. And I think it's a shame that Virginia has allowed the transportation network to be in the situation that it's in because we don't have tolls on the road. And with all the technologies now, there's no reason to think that there's a congestion problem because now you don't even stop to pay a toll. Heck, they can send me a bill for a toll in Maryland. And so I think it's, you know, it's unfortunate. This is my personal opinion. It's unfortunate that Virginia took the hard stance against tolls some years back, and not taking the long view and asking the question, where's the funding going to come from for our road projects? And if you look back, there's a very clear distinction of when the money ran out. It was there. There was about 10 years after the tolls came off the Virginia highways, but there was money there. And when that money stopped, that's when the issues began for localities and paying for transportation improvements. So
That might be an idea.
a little bit of looking back at the history and that flow of funding, to me, says, why don't we have tolls? And, you know, it's I think I'd rather pay a 50-cent toll or $1 toll if it allowed me to reduce the gas, something in the gas. You know, it's there. Guys, the entire country uses our roads, and there's no way around it because of where we are strategically, geographically. People often hear me say we are blessed and cursed by our geography, and so this is one of those instances where we can certainly be blessed by it if we would, you know, have a shift in mindset and put tolls back on.
It also has a simultaneous side effect, which is also good. One of the only things that gets people out of their car and onto the train is when the gas price goes up, or when you make driving more expensive. So you put a toll on the highway. Now suddenly driving a car isn't so cheap.
And then we're back to the Rappahannock-Potomac Transportation Commission and their gas tax. They have it up north, Stafford, Pennsylvania, Fredericksburg.
You have the gas tax too, you just don't get any of the money. The gas tax was normalized across the
That's right, I'm
whole of
sorry,
Virginia.
I apologize, I forgot.
So the difference between
I
Stafford,
remember it now.
the difference between Stafford and you is that Stafford gets some of their gas tax back and you don't.
Why is that?
Well, because you didn't opt into the commuter rail program.
So we have rail here, we can have a little.
Actually, I lied.
conversation.
Actually, I lied because you're just about to get some of your gas tax back in these two small scale projects that were.
Okay.
There are only two ways. There are only two ways of getting your gas tax back. Three ways. There are three ways. One, a small scale project, which is it's a bidding war. Second one is opt into the commuter rail program because they give you the money back so you can pay for the commuter rail trains. And there's always a little bit left over. Leon will tell you that you can use on your local roads. And the third way is to have that thing that I'm not allowed to talk about anymore because they voted it down.
Oh, the regional transportation.
Yes, that thing. Those are legally, those are only three ways you can get your gas tax back. And at the moment, the only way you are getting some back is in those years where you win a small scale project.
Yeah.
And in the years you don't win a small scale project, you don't get a cent of your gas tax back at all.
Well, but going back strategically, there should be a continuing conversation with your concept of a toll on 95. And if people don't like that, okay, then where are we going to get the money? And if the pipes corrode, and they do corrode onto the roads, then how are you going to fix them? And you don't scramble around at the last minute. You try to be proactive, and that's called efficiency, right?
It is.
So,
And the federal gas tax has not gone up since 1993. So these things you're starting to hear a theme. The rural transportation funding hasn't gone up for 23 or some years. The federal gas tax hasn't gone up since 1993. And guess what does go up? The cost of everything. So you're able to do less with federal dollars for roads. You're able to do less rural transportation planning because when it pegs like that.
okay. Well, the work of this committee is important with the trying to formulate and to move forward with a agenda and perhaps some organization to try to make real acquisition of money, an income stream to fund it is essential. Otherwise,
I agree with you. Mr. Chairman, I know you've got a couple more items on your agenda, but if you keep me in the meeting, I'm probably going to keep interrupting. Would you mind if Carrie and I excused ourselves and let you carry on with the rest of your item?
Not at all. Kyle said he could.
and I'll try to be quiet too.
Yeah,
So it won't.
I can make these last few real brief. So you all. Thanks. Going out of here.
Be safe on her.
So the next one is the dry bridge. There's two projects, and I'm going to speak really high level. And frankly, this is more of a county thing, Gary Wilson thing, because there's two routes. It was Ruther Glen Road and Dry Bridge Road, which both of those Caroline County worked with our folks in central office. We have a lot of different access programs. There's industrial access, there's recreational access, there's actually an airport access program, which I've never been involved with, because you're not really building too many roads, state roads, and airports. It's just not something I deal with a lot. We do have one they're talking about the Shannon Airport, so I get to check that one off the list. But there's programs that we have where localities can apply and get, word free money. Well, Caroline County applied for two grants, one for Dry Bridge and one for Ruther Glen, to widen, rebuild, and straighten out some of the curves. Obviously, you've got a lot of, call it industrial traffic out that way. And especially when you have some of these tight curves, these big track trailers can't make those turns, and So they got money to do that. I think Caroline County has hired, if I recall, it was Kimberly Horn. I may be wrong on that, but Caroline County, huh?
In the process of trying to hire.
Yeah, so they're working through a design to try and take a look at those curves and straighten some of those things out. So I don't have any time frames or anything for you. And the grant, I believe, is only for design at this point. Construction of this would be a whole different conversation, but it's something that you can work towards. And maybe there's a revenue sharing program in the future where you can try and get a cash match. There's a lot of different options. But we talked about with the Route 1 pipeline study, it's like phase 1 is you got to get a idea. Phase 2, you got to get a design, right? Until you do these things, you're kind of dead in the water. So that's kind of just a quick update there. Next thing on the list here is a rural road study, or a high-risk rural road. So I'm just going to pass this out to you all, and I'll kind of explain what exactly it is that you're looking at here. So the high-risk rural roads program is one that actually, I believe it's federal funding.
It's HSIP.
Yeah, it's through the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which HSIP is actually, it's the same stuff that we applied for through the federal government, FHWA, when we're looking at like spotted safety improvements. So that's how the program used to work, is a lot of those, it could be, it's very data driven is where I'm going with this. And you get money that from the HSIP program based off of how many fatalities you may have at a certain location, or run off the road crashes. So the data has to back what the project is funding, right? What they've moved to here recently is it's more, they have a HSIP program, if you will, specifically for rural roads. And I believe that criteria is based off of like volume, vehicles per day. So I actually was in this room, I guess it was about a year or so ago, Leon, and we talked about, there's the columns over on the left side, the segments completed in UBC 122984. There's about, 10 or so routes. Those are some of the ones that we looked at about a year ago. Those are all finished. So what these high-risk rural road improvements are, they're countermeasures like curve warning signs, right? And it could be a road where you already have curve warnings or chevrons or whatever the treatment may be. But through this high-risk rural roads program, we go out and we look at them. There need to be more. Are they spaced appropriately? Are they at the adequate height? Are there, like I said, are there enough of them? Are they big enough? Do they need to be, on a certain different posts? They're looking at striping. Is the road wide enough to have center line or edge line or the warning signs that that show when you have a curve coming up, right? Those have changed over the years. Like the old school ones are just like this little arrow. Now, like, they may have an advisory placard and they may show exactly what the curve does. The signs have been updated over the years. So we're going out and we're looking at these segments of roads, and we are determining if they meet current standards for these warning signs, and for any kind of countermeasures to make the road safer, to prevent run off the road accidents. And they chose these roads specifically due to the data, right? So these are roads where they did have a crash history, if you will. That's how these roads got determined. So the ones on the right, they're going to look to have all of these completed by the spring of 2026. So it's out for construction advertisement now. And this is just the ones in Caroline County. Mind you, they've got some others in Spotsylvania, Stafford, and elsewhere. But these are all the roads in Caroline County that they're going to be working on over about the next year. So I don't have the graphics with me like I did last year, just because there's too many of these things to go through. But if there's any that you're specifically interested in, I would be happy to pull the sketch, and maybe next time we can take a deeper dive into what kind of improvements we're doing. So like I said, some of these areas, they might not have anything out there now. Some of them, they might have them, and we just need to upgrade them and make them current and appropriate. Maybe they've lost reflectivity, maybe they're at the wrong height, like all the things I mentioned earlier. So pretty great things. We talk about making the backcountry roads in Caroline that we all drive on, making them a little safer.
Ones that just have a project name, like Reedy Mill Road, how far, is it a specific length, or is it just?
I don't, without having the contract, I can't tell you exactly, but my guess would be that it's the entire length.
Yeah, let's say.
Yeah. And if where it says like, the one above that, Golensville Road at Rogers Clark, it's not just that intersection, it's a segment around Rogers Clark Boulevard.
These are great.
If you remember the sketches that I had last year, it's very similar stuff. They're going to be removing some, changing them, adding them, making sure that they're current and up to date. So that's number one. And then the last thing here
So
is...
can I ask a question? So when we started, there were 29 projects on the list, and we completed 8 of the 29, so almost 30% of the.
Some of those might have been the ones from previous. It depends if that list that you're referring to is the one that's on the right. That could have, maybe they just did a small amount of them and they're finishing up the rest of this next segment of that. So I don't know. Those are all the ones that they said all of those are going out for ad on the right, and they'll be done by spring of 26.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a fair high percentage of the number of completed projects. So I think that's
We look good.
something else. And you guys may not remember, we had a significant amount of conversation at this committee about this. So
Yeah.
there again, your work coming to fruition.
Yeah. Now, the good and bad thing, when VDOT gets involved in a lot of things, and I think that we have to be this person as the steward of your taxpayer dollar, we are very data driven and very black and white. And I think that that's good, right? I think the locality has opportunities where they get to say, hey, I hear you, Mr. VDOT, but we want this, right? You have opportunities to do that through the secondary 6-year plan and through even Smart Scale to a certain extent, understanding that you have to go through the state. There's opportunities for that. HSIP is one of my favorite programs because that's not political. That's about saving lives. That is, where's the data and what do we need to do to correct the problem? Yes, it absolutely does. And I get the argument from citizens when I'm explaining things. One of my favorites is, hey, I want this flashing warning sign. Like Lake Caroline, I think, was just, they wanted that, right? And the response often from VDOT's standpoint is, I'm sorry, that doesn't meet the criteria. There aren't any crashes there. And their immediate reaction is, what are you, VDOT? You're waiting for somebody to die to put a flashing light on? Like, no. But the reality is, you know how many people ask me for those things? And if I put them at every place where someone says there's a problem, people become numb to them, just like a speed limit sign. Just another sign. You become numb to them, right? If you had things flashing at you every curve you went through, that's just not realistic, and you become numb to the treatment. Rumble strips on the road, going across a lane, same conversation. We don't put those up anywhere because I save those for the places where, unfortunately, I have existing problems. Right? Page Road, good example. That one had the data. That one, they have the flashing warning sign because there were fatalities there. We talked about that, right? That's why it scored as well as it did in Smart Scale. It was the crash data. So that's why I like HSIP. It takes some of the political back and forth out of it, and it's, where is the need and what do we need to do to correct it and help? These are small ticket items at the end of the day, but they go very far when you talk about data and helping people stay on the roads. Okay. So switching to SSYP, Leon. So we're getting ready, secondary 6-year plan. I know we talked about this last year, we're gonna do it every year. The secondary 6-year plan, we typically approve that through the county in the April, May timeframe. Secondary 6-year plan is money that VDOT gets typically from telecommunications. So the telecommunication companies, they pay VDOT a certain amount of money to be within the right of way. That money goes into this giant pot. It goes into a formula and comes out, and all the localities get money. And you all, and really this committee, gets to prioritize what that money is spent on. Now, it's not a large sum of money. If I recall, Caroline County was at like 80 to 90,000 last year. Yeah, he'll check it out. But it's not a significant amount of money, but that's every year, right? And that adds up. And over the span, you have a 6-year plan, you can program that money out to 2028 and 9 and even 30 and plan for a project. You can add that money onto different applications. You can put your own money with it and create a project. And I don't have it with me right now, but the secondary 6-year plan in previous years, that's how we helped fund, if I recall, the Farmers Drive intersection where we straightened out that curve. We've taken a lot of gravel roads throughout the county and we have upgraded them to hard surface roads. And if you've lived on a gravel road, as I once did in my life, it's messy and it requires a lot of maintenance. Granted, it's a state road, VDOT's maintaining it, but that's your taxpayer dollars having to go out there pretty often to regrade a road 2 or 3 times a year. You get dust on your vehicle pretty often. You gotta wash it all the time. You can't really put salt down on it when it snows. You a lot of downsides to having a gravel road. Some upsides, but a lot of downsides. So one of the things that I think I had told you all a while back is that I was going to bring some of the routes that we have. This is a list of all the gravel roads in Caroline County that are state maintained. Okay. These green ones are ones that qualify as of right now for the Rural Westlake program. There's only 4. That's pretty outstanding.
Well, I do want to highlight too, Rattle Trap, one of them is one that already has a funded project in.
Yeah, through the secondary 6-year plan. Yeah, there's a comment over on the very right that says that one is soon to be surface treated. But you've got these other 3 here. These are projects that if you all so tell us, we could work on getting some estimates together and potentially add them onto the secondary 6-year plan. Now, the other option is what's called a rural addition. You can use telefees for rural additions as well. Now, what that is taking a private road that's not in the state system and upgrading it to our rural standard, hard surfacing it, and bringing that into the system. So we've done that as well.
Donated right of way from the property owners.
That's exactly, that's where it's going next. Now, the only caveat with that is you have to have right of way about 50 feet, if I recall, 40 feet of right of way that is donated to public use and then dedicated through. So we've got it in the state system.
And normally the property owners come to the county as opposed to us
Yes.
Usually.
Yes.
generating.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, and this is some personal opinion, I would only do it if that were the case, because the reality is you've got a lot of people bought a road on a private road, they know it's private. You've got existing roads that people bought that are state maintained. Those are the ones where I feel that the state taxpayer dollars should go,
Yeah.
right? Now, rural addition, it's a program for a reason. There's a lot of roads that you can bring into the system that serve a public need. Now, there's a criteria for that. You have to have three dwellings, 3 occupied dwellings. You have to, is it 50 vehicles per day?
There's another restriction on rural addition. So you have to have 3 or more occupied dwellings, has to be connected to a state route in some way. You have to have the 40-foot right of way and has to have been in existence for at least 20 years.
20 years. I like my memory back. It's going. Yeah, so you got to meet all that criteria. Look, right now, I'm not asking for anything. We're as we approach the April timeframe, we've got, we don't even know what this year's secondary 6-year plan money is going to be. We usually find that out in March. So once that happens, I'm going to quickly get with Leon and say, Leon, we got $60,000, $80,000, whatever it may be. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. We have to program that money for something. Now, that money doesn't go a long ways at the end of the day, but we want to start having some conversations about what we want to start adding. And even if it's not this year, and maybe we work towards it in the outer years. It could be something like adding a turn lane on a secondary road. Now, it has to be a secondary road. It cannot be a primary road. That's the only caveat. This is the secondary 6-year plan. You cannot do any route numbers 599 below.
Well, certainly getting the cost estimates for the remaining 3 that are green is a great idea.
Yep. One thing to be thinking about is we would want to ask this committee, what is the priority with those?
Among the 3.
And maybe you look at it with vehicles per day, right? You got one Mount Gideon Road, you got 189 vehicles per day. That's 0.6 centerline miles. Then you have another one that's 54 vehicles per day, but it's 1.5. That's probably going to be a little bit more expensive.
So there's a point of clarification. So these would be additions to the adopted 6-year. So there are already projects on the 6-year road. These would be additions. So I think one of the things we talked about as a committee is, ranking those, all of these projects so that we can get them knocked out. And there again, we talked about that small amount of money that the board is setting aside each year. This is a place where that money could potentially be allocated.
What we do is wait till the time frame where the 6-year plan is brought before us to see you'll have shortfalls potentially, and so we'll just wait till the whole package.
I think, given the time frame, probably next month, we need to have this conversation, given the way the schedule is. So that's exactly why I wanted this on this agenda, because next month is going to be time to start sharpen your pencil a little bit.
And
Maybe in the meantime,
maybe
I hate to interrupt you, but maybe the committee members can drive the remaining 3 roads, see what you see.
To answer your earlier question, Kyle,
Viewings.
$91,000 per year. And out of that, about $10,000 of it has to be used on paved roads.
Okay. And about how much is it per mile these days? The hard surface and existing
That's
gravel.
a good question. I don't know that we have.
All right, so about 9,000 has to be spent on
About
how
10
much is rattle trap?
10,000 per year.
has to be used on this list. You have
Alright.
another 81,000 that has a little more flexibility with it, but can't be used on these. Rattle trap on the estimate was 350,000, I think.
So rattle trap is 350. That's 0.8 miles.
Yeah.
Now every project is different, so I can't tell you that's just like the blanket linear.
A little bit of inflation factor would probably be good too.
Yeah. That could have had a really deep pipe that needs to be replaced along with it.
So one comment about this list. You got Forward Lane on here. Should that come off the list?
It will,
Okay.
because of the development that's going on in that
We
location.
abandoned the portion.
Yes, it should.
Yeah, we review this every year. We have to get comments back to this.
You have a development there? Okay.
That's what AWS facility is.
Okay,
They purchased the property that surrounded it, and we abandoned that portion that was public.
cool.
I know, and one of the ones on here, I get a lot of comments about is Liberty Fork. That is the vehicles per day is only 13, but we get a lot of calls on that one. Folks that live back there wanting to hard surface that. It doesn't meet the vehicles per day. But if that ever got to be 50, that might be one that we could look at as well. Another thing to be thinking about, and again, I'm just giving these as easy underhanded. Hey, here's something we can do with this money. My other localities, the program that we have really hit hard, and they throw a lot of their local funds at it, is we do this program where we trench widen some of these backcountry roads. So we come in and put a contract out, and we'll go and widen about 2 feet on either side of the road, assuming it can be widened. It depends on the right of way, depends on the ditch, all these things. You got to have existing shoulders. So we review it, determine if that's possible. We widen it, and then we come in and we overlay it and restripe it if we need to. It is a fantastic program. A little bit more money though. And Stafford and Spotsylvania have liked it so much that they're giving us about $1 million to $2 million a year.
For their own,
Yeah, that's their own county money, and they're giving it to me to go do this work. I would love to do something like that in Caroline if we can figure out where that funding, and you can use SSYP funds.
it's gonna be a second.
I'll tell you, I'm sorry, what?
On a second.
Yes, and most of these ones we're talking about will be
Can't do it
secondary.
on,
Can do it like Route 1.
Primary route 2, right?
No. But HSIP funds might be able to, you know, that's how the section of Spotsylvania got wide. It was through HSIP funds. Data was there. So when you talk about that program though, with the widening, that is, people see that, and they absolutely love it. It is a great program. It's a little bit more costly. We do have, I think that one's about 250,000.
Like 350.
350 a mile. So that gets rather costly. We don't have to overlay it, but it is definitely preferred because it seals the joint. You talk about long-term maintenance. You don't want to have a joint on the kind of where the wheel path is. It's just not good practice. But if it's, you know, if you're getting something where you didn't have it before, I think we could have that conversation.
So you say 350K per mile for trench widening?
And that's both sides. That's 2 feet on either side and an overlay of the entire road.
And you all might know the history is through, why did Rattletrap Road rise to the top to be hard surface?
That was a county decision.
Okay.
It was voted on by the board.
Probably several
I
years
have
ago.
no idea.
Probably a good while ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we've done several of those throughout the years.
Yeah, you've shrunken this list, I bet, a lot.
Absolutely. This, when I first got here 11 years ago, no doing of mine necessarily, but this was a
Long
substantial
list.
list.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
There's a lot of other parts of the state that wish their unpaved road list was this short.
Yeah, this looks great.
So just food for thought for now. I don't think we need it. We don't even know what the funding is going to be, and but when we get to that point, I think Leon and us are going to quickly get together and hopefully come to you all with some proposals. But need to be thinking about the priority list here, at least of these 3 that are left.
There's a lot of traffic on those too. Beverly Run and Mount Gideon.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to drive those. With public road, I can drive.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Kyle.
Great.
Certainly appreciate it. The next item on the agenda is new business. Anyone have any new business? Hearing none,
Motion to adjourn?
there's a motion
Definitely.
To adjourn?
to adjourn. And a second. We are,
You go to, after that, you go to discussion, second. There's not, then we vote.
we don't need to discuss the motion to adjourn.
No, actually, a motion, Robert's Rules of Order, a motion to adjourn.
Just if we haven't adopted Robert's Rules of Order.
That's
We have no
right.
rules of order.
We're still in.
No, very good.
So is there a,
See those 17 notes?
all in favor, say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.